The sky hung low over the city, its gray clouds pressing against the rooftops like a ceiling slowly collapsing. A cold wind howled through the narrow alleys, pulling at the coats of passers-by, shaking loose garbage and rusted cans, and slicing through the exposed skin of anyone unfortunate enough to be out in it. But none of it mattered to her. She was kneeling in the shadow of a rusted dumpster behind a long-abandoned diner. The metal smelled of rot and grease, and it sang with every gust of wind. Her fingers were raw and cracked, nails chipped and bleeding as she sifted through the trash for anything remotely resembling fabric, anything that might keep her from freezing through another night. Her name was Mara, though she hadn't spoken it aloud in weeks, maybe months. Time blurred when you were invisible. She tugged free a torn curtain stained with something foul, but it was thick enough to wrap around her shaking shoulders, even if the smell turned her stomach. Her breath came in sharp clouds. Her lips were purple. Her feet, wrapped in plastic bags over worn socks, had long since gone numb. Behind her, footsteps echoed faintly. She froze, her body stiffening like prey caught in the open. Then came a voice. Low, calm, male. Are you cold? She turned sharply, eyes wide and frantic. She expected danger, expected cruelty, maybe laughter. But the man who stood at the alley's mouth wasn't sneering. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't even armed. He looked concerned. He stepped forward slowly, holding a dark green blanket in his hands. Thick, woolen, clean. Mara scrambled back on her knees, clutching the stained curtain tighter. I'm not hurting you, the man said softly, kneeling a few feet away from her. You look cold. That's all. She didn't respond. My name's Eli, he continued. I live just around the corner. I've seen you here before. Still, she said nothing. Her eyes flicked from him to the blanket to the open end of the alley. He noticed her look. You can run if you want. I won't follow. Just take this, okay? He gently placed the blanket on the ground between them, then backed away slowly, hands raised. Mara stared at it like it was a trap, a trick, but the warmth radiating from it in the bitter cold was undeniable. When Eli reached the alley mouth, he turned back one last time. I don't think people are meant to be alone like this, he said. If you ever want a place to sit, even just to warm up for a bit, you're welcome. Doors read, 3 buildings down. Then he vanished around the corner. Mara didn't move for nearly 10 minutes. But eventually, she reached out and pulled the blanket to her chest. It was heavy, real, and it smelled faintly of cedar and home. The next day, Mara didn't see him. The blanket had kept her warm enough to sleep, truly sleep, for the first time in weeks. But morning came hard, and her stomach twisted in on itself. She wandered down the street. Every fiber of her body tensed with suspicion, but she saw the red door easily. 3rd building down. She didn't knock. She wouldn't knock. But she sat near it, beside the stoop, her back against the wall, out of the wind, just resting. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then the door creaked open. Eli stood there, holding 2 steaming mugs. He looked down at her and didn't smile, but his eyes were kind. Coffee, he offered. She didn't speak, but she reached up slowly and took the mug. It was hot. It was bitter. It was heaven. Over the next week, a fragile rhythm formed. Mara would appear near the alley around noon, and Eli would appear minutes later. He never asked questions, never demanded her name or her past. He offered food, a hot drink, clean socks, once even a small package of bandages and ointment. She refused most of it, at first, but hunger and cold did not care about pride. One day she asked why. Eli tilted his head. Why what? Why are you doing this? What do you want? Nothing, he said honestly. Just don't like watching people freeze to death. That's all. The wind grew crueler with each passing day. Frost clung to the windows like claws. The alleys iced over, turning the ground into traps for the unwary. Mara stopped coming one day, then two, then three. Eli searched the alleys for her, his boots crunching on broken glass and ice, calling her name into the silence, only to remember she'd never given it. On the fourth morning, he found her behind a pile of crates near the dumpster. She was curled up beneath the blanket he'd given her, but her skin was too pale, her breath shallow. He didn't hesitate. He scooped her into his arms, so light it terrified him, and carried her through the snow-covered streets back to the red door. The warmth of the apartment hit her like a dream. Mara awoke to the soft crackle of a heater, the smell of soap, and clean sheets. She panicked at first, thrashing in the bed, but Eli was there in an instant. "You're safe," he said, kneeling beside her. "You were sick, freezing. I had to bring you inside." She tried to rise, but winced at the pain in her ribs. "Just rest," he whispered, and for once she did. Days passed. She stayed. At first, she barely spoke, ate only when he left the room, showered behind locked doors, and kept her eyes on exits. But slowly, the walls began to crack. She told him her name. He told her about the bookstore he used to run. They watched old movies, shared food. She laughed once, only once, but sounded like bells. Then one night, as snow drifted past the window and ghostly curtains, she whispered, "They left me. My parents, when I was 15, said they'd be back in an hour. Never came." Eli said nothing, but he didn't look away. They found their car wrapped around a pole a week later. "I bounced through shelters, got out, found someone who promised a better life." Her voice went quiet, but it wasn't. "I ran again. Didn't stop running for a long time." "You're not running anymore," he said gently. "I don't know how to stay," she replied. "You don't have to figure it out alone." Spring crept in with shy footsteps. The snow melted, the sky softened, and Mara began to bloom. She trimmed her hair, helped cook, found a battered notebook, and began to sketch again. Eli bought her charcoal pencils and a canvas. She wept at the sight of them. The apartment, once quiet and still, now echoed with music and conversation. She laughed more, smiled more. But some days she would still sit by the window, staring at the street below like it might swallow her up again. Eli never pushed. He only sat beside her. And one rainy afternoon, as thunder rolled in the distance, he said, "You can stay as long as you want." She looked at him, then stood, walked across the room, and wrapped him in the blanket he had once given her. "I'm already home," she whispered.